The slam of car doors shattered the calm of my ranch that morning. I glanced up from my coffee and spotted a minivan pulled up to my private gate. 4 strangers were unloading paddle boards and coolers as if the place belonged to them. They strolled right past the bright red private property sign, chatting away about their lake day. I set my mug down and walked over. "Excuse me. This is private land. The lake isn't open to the public." A woman in designer sunglasses turned, looking baffled. "But we booked this online. Paid $75 for the day. Look." She pulled up her phone and showed me a confirmation for Peaceful Waters Lake access. My stomach sank. That was my lake, and I'd never authorized anything like it. "Where exactly did you book this?" I asked, trying to keep my tone even. She scrolled to the Riverside Estates HOA community page. The listing advertised a new amenity for residents and guests. I didn't need to guess twice who was behind it. Let me back up. My name is David Thornton. I've owned this 100-acre ranch for 15 years, including a pristine 20-acre lake that I've kept private and carefully protected. My land borders Riverside Estates, an HOA community that has been both a blessing and, recently, a curse. 6 months earlier, Patricia Hartwell, though most neighbors simply called her Karen for obvious reasons, was elected HOA president. Early 50s, immaculately put together, and with the temperament of a drill sergeant crossed with a pushy salesman, she had her eye on my lake from the beginning. At community meetings I attended out of courtesy. She'd casually float ideas. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we expanded our amenities? Imagine that beautiful lake being enjoyed by the whole neighborhood. I always declined politely. That lake was my sanctuary, home to native fish I'd cultivated and a nesting ground for local waterfowl. But Patricia didn't accept no. Her campaign escalated. First came the official HOA letters suggesting I open the lake for community events. Then came the uninvited visits, bringing committee members along to discuss benefits. Each time I firmly refused. But listing my lake online for paid access? That was another level of audacity. After apologizing to the confused family and sending them on their way, I rushed inside. Sure enough, on the HOA's website was a professional-looking ad. Photos of my lake taken from the roadside. Pricing packages, even fake 5-star reviews about the serene atmosphere and excellent fishing. The listing claimed it was part of a new partnership, with local landowners and named Patricia Hartwell as the contact. Printed everything and called my attorney, Janet Morrison. "She's charging people to use your private property without permission," Janet said, astonished. "David, that's fraud, trespassing, and several other violations. What's the best move?" I asked. "We can send a cease and desist, press charges, even sue for damages. But give me a little time. I want to see if there's a smarter play." Over the next week, I documented everything. More families arrived, waving booking confirmations. I turned them away politely, gathered their details as witnesses, and set up security cameras. Meanwhile, Patricia doubled down, sending me an email accusing me of being selfish and hurting property values. Then Janet called with news. "David, you're not going to believe this. The Millers just put their 5-acre lot up for sale. It borders your property and Patricia's house. That parcel was key. It controlled the only decent access point to my lake from the Riverside side. What are you thinking?" I asked, though I already suspected. "Sometimes the best defense is a good offense," she said. Within days, we created an LLC, Pine Valley Investments, and quietly bought the Miller lot with an all-cash offer, $20,000 over asking. The sale closed in 2 weeks. Patricia had no idea who the buyer was. The morning after closing, a construction crew arrived at 7 a.m. sharp. Their task, build an 8-foot privacy fence along the new property line. Legal, permitted, and positioned perfectly to block Patricia's view and access to the lake. By noon, her silver SUV screeched to a halt at the site. She stormed out, face red, fury radiating. "What is the meaning of this?" she shrieked at the foreman. "You can't put a fence here, it blocks the lake access." Roberto, the crew leader, stayed calm. "We're following the owner's instructions, ma'am. Everything's legal. And who owns this property? I demand to speak to them. You'll have to contact Pine Valley Investments. I just build fences." I watched the whole scene on my security feed, sipping coffee on the porch. Patricia spent the rest of the day on the phone, county offices, the realtor, even the police. Each told her the same thing. The property owner had every right to fence their land. By evening, she managed to track down my LLC's registered agent, Janet. The voicemail Patricia left was priceless. "I know this is David Thornton's doing," she screeched, voice dripping with rage. Harassment, that's what they called it. "That fence is blocking established community lake access. I'll sue. I'll have him arrested. The entire HOA board will hear about this." Janet phoned me, laughing. "Want me to respond?" "Not yet," I said. "Let's see what her next move is." I didn't have to wait long. By Saturday morning, chaos broke loose. 12 families arrived with Lake Day reservations, only to discover the new fence blocking the entrance. Karen was forced to meet them at the gate, fumbling through desperate excuses as she refunded their money out of her own pocket. But the real fireworks began on Monday. I received an official HOA notice demanding that I remove the fence and stop interfering with community lake access. They'd even scheduled an emergency board meeting for Wednesday evening. Perfect. Exactly what I'd been waiting for. That night, Janet and I walked into the crowded community center, armed with a thick folder of evidence. Karen sat at the board's table, exuding smug confidence, clearly convinced she had me cornered. "Before we begin," I said, standing up, "I'd like to clarify something. This fence you're so concerned about? It stands on property I recently purchased. I have every legal right to fence my own land." Karen's face drained of color. You bought the Miller property? Through Pine Valley Investments?" "Yes, completely legal," I replied. "Just as I have the right to fence my land, I also have the right to control access to it." Which brings me to my next point. I opened my folder and handed out documents to each board member. These are screenshots of an unauthorized booking system charging families for access to my private lake, my property outside of HOA jurisdiction. This isn't just unauthorized use. It's fraud, theft by deception, and criminal trespassing. The board members' expressions shifted from confusion to alarm as they examined the evidence. "And furthermore," I continued, "here are signed statements from 37 families who paid for lake access, along with security footage of trespassing and, most interestingly, an email from Ms. Hartwell herself, calling me selfish for not sharing my private property." An elderly board member, Thomas, cleared his throat. "Patricia, is this true? Did you list this man's private lake online without his permission?" Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I was trying to increase community value. The lake was just sitting there unused. "It's my private property," I said firmly. "You had no right to list it, charge fees, or pocket the money." Which raises the question, where exactly did those booking fees go? The room fell silent. Sandra, another board member, leaned forward. "Patricia, did you keep the money?" Karen's reply was weak. "It was for the HOA, administrative fees for managing the amenity." "Then show us the deposits," Thomas demanded. If this was official business, there should be records. Karen's complexion shifted from pale to red to purple. I was going to transfer it. I just hadn't gotten around to it yet." Janet stepped forward. "My client is prepared to file criminal charges, fraud, theft, trespassing, harassment. However, he is willing to consider alternatives, provided the board takes immediate corrective action." The room dissolved into shouting. Board members demanded Karen's resignation, arguments flew over liability and possible lawsuits from defrauded families, and someone even suggested involving the district attorney. Karen tried to bang her gavel and shriek about procedure, but no one was listening. The vote to remove her as HOA president was unanimous, but her downfall didn't end there. Word spread quickly. The real estate firm where she worked part-time launched an ethics investigation after multiple client complaints. Families she'd scammed demanded refunds plus compensation. 2 weeks later, I was on my dock when a process server appeared. "Are you Patricia Hartwell?" he asked, confused. "No, I'm David Thornton. This is my property. Karen lives in Riverside Estates." He frowned at his paperwork. "Strange. This lists her new address as the adjacent lot. That's when I learned the truth. Karen had panic sold her house at a massive loss, trying to buy the Miller property from Pine Valley Investments. She'd even submitted an offer to Janet's office, unaware that Pine Valley was my LLC. Janet had politely declined. stating the owner intended to keep the land indefinitely. The process server eventually found her at her mother's house across town. She was being sued by the district attorney's office. 17 counts of fraud and theft by deception, one for each family scammed before I shut her down. 3 months later, word spread that she pled guilty to reduced charges. She avoided prison but was sentenced to 2 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and ordered to pay $23,000 in restitution and fines. The last time anyone saw her in Riverside Estates was the day she returned to collect her belongings from her foreclosed house. Roberto, my fence contractor, happened to be installing a decorative gate on my property. He told me she sat in her car for 20 minutes, staring at the fence that had ended her HOA reign. Before driving away, I kept the Miller property and transformed it into a small nature preserve, planting native trees and adding a butterfly garden. The new HOA board, far more reasonable than the old one, even presented me with a beautification award for enhancing the neighborhood. And the fence? I topped it with a sign in elegant lettering, "Private Property."